there. I'm Heather Chirtea, the Executive Director of Digital Wish, and we're here today to talk about solving the digital divide. I'm so excited. We've got Wendy Seacrest here from the Idaho Workforce Development Council, as well as Sabri Raja from Nepris to talk about employee volunteering. So many times when we look at solving the digital divide, we talk about hardware and we talk about hotspots and laptops. But today we're going to take it a couple steps further. Hotspots and laptops are the first step to survival, to getting those kids on the internet. There's 11 million kids without a connection at home. You can come to Digital Wish and get a hotspot or a laptop, and there's plenty of other places you can get those. But once that need is filled, well, then what are we really trying to do to solve the digital divide? Well, we are looking at workforce development. We're preparing those students for employment. So we are going to look at the employment side of things today. So Wendy, without further ado, take it away.
All right, thank you, Heather. I appreciate the opportunity today. Let me just tell you a little bit about my background. So I've worked across economic development, workforce development, higher education, and then also in the private sector throughout my career over the past 20 or so years. And it's really given me the opportunity to see things from different angles. So working in economic development, you're helping, companies to create jobs in, higher education in general, you're helping prepare people for jobs. And then in the private sector, you get the most fun part of it, which is actually putting people into jobs. So that, said, I want to paint a little bit of a picture as to why. Why is this so important? Why do we need to be connecting education to careers, and how does the digital divide come into play with that aspiration? So Heather, if you put up my slides, please. I'm going to give you a little background as to what's going on in Idaho today. The numbers on the screen paint a picture of what was happening, and these are pre-pandemic, but we anticipated that 90,000 people would be entering our labor force by 2028. During that same time period, we were projecting that our employers would be creating 105,000 new jobs. And Idaho's a small state, big geographically, but small, number-wise. So, if you're in another state, add a few zeros to it, but you're probably experiencing very, very similar things. Where we're at today isn't very different. We hit the break-even point for recovery in October for non-farm employment, and we were the first state in the nation to hit that break-even. So while our employers may have had a small break in trying to recruit talent, we're back to where we started, and this is putting significant stress on our economy. Go back one slide.
Oh, one slide, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So, every day in the news, we're hearing businesses that are having to decrease their hours, they're closing temporarily because they can't get the employees that they need. Our governor is ending participation in federal unemployment programs effective June 19th. Many states are offering return to work bonuses to try and get people back into the labor force. We did that last July and had just under 30,000 Idahoans receive a bonus, which was about a $36 million investment in helping to get people to work. Some good news is that we're one of the fastest growing states in the nation, but when you dig into the data, our in-migration is comprised of more retirees than those who will be entering our labor force. So when people look at these two numbers, they get really excited or really nervous about the 15,000 people that we're not going to have to meet our employers' needs, right? But what keeps me up at night is the 90,000 people that we are going to have, and make sure that they have the right skills for the jobs that are being created. Both of those require us to bridge the digital divide to ensure that all Idahoans have access to the education and training that they're going to need to connect to these jobs. So we're really looking at this as a two-step approach to address the talent. And the first is aligning talent to employer needs. And then the second is developing hidden talent. So to align talent to employer needs, we have to first understand what their needs are. In the past, we'd bring employers and educators together, and sometimes those discussions were fruitful, and other times they didn't really lead to anything actionable. So to create a true system in Idaho, we began rolling out the U.S. Chamber Foundation's Talent Pipeline Management Academy in the spring of 2020. TPM leverages supply chain management theory to do workforce planning. First, employers with similar workforce needs are brought together to engage in demand planning. Then they align the skills and credential requirements across those occupations. After that's done, the educators and community organizations are brought in to identify the talent sources and the training needs. The big differentiator in TPM is that the focus is on skills. We look at the skills that are required rather than just the jobs. The demand planning uses jobs to prioritize the effort, but then it's taken down to the skills that are needed for the most in-demand jobs. And that's where magic can happen, because skills are transferable across so many jobs. So if we can get our education and workforce system aligned to the skills, we can collaborate to create the talent pipelines across many employers and industries. Once we have a better understanding of the numbers and skills that our employers need, then we can turn to developing talent sources. So if we don't align the skills of those 90,000 people entering our workforce to the needs of our employers, it's not going to matter that we need 15,000 more to fill their needs. Our employers are going to be faced with acquiring the talent elsewhere, and that might look like recruiting remote workers from other states or countries, or it could look like opening facilities in other places. And quite frankly, Idaho doesn't want to lose them. When Governor Little took office in 2018, we asked him what he wanted from the Workforce Development Council. And he said, would you please just keep employers from coming into my office complaining that they can't find enough skilled workers? We had a little laugh at that, and we felt pretty good about our efforts until now. Our governor joined us again in April and shared with us that, while he, is still hearing employers complaining, he's starting to tell them that they need to consider what they're paying. We've known for a long time that, Idaho's considered a low wage state, and I'm super excited that the governor is willing to start saying out loud that our employers need to pay more, but pay alone is just one of the issues. If we look at our labor force participation rate in Idaho, it's 2.5% higher than the nation, but it's 6% lower than our high of 70% in 2005. So that's certainly an area that we can improve, but things like available childcare, housing, transportation, and access to education and training, which obviously is of huge importance in solving the digital divide. All of that plays into increasing participation in the labor force. With our low 3.1% unemployment rate, we have to look deeper and see which populations aren't experiencing the same benefits of our strong economy. 1 in 4 people in the United States identify as having a disability. So if employers want to have their workplace mirror their customer base, there's a huge opportunity to invite more individuals with disabilities into the workforce. And remote work, during the pandemic has really shown us that the model works. We can provide opportunities for people with disabilities that don't have to leave their homes in order to bring them into the workforce. So in Idaho, we've got a 12.2% unemployment rate within that population of people with disabilities, and their labor force participation is only 48%. So huge space in there to engage them into the labor market. Idaho has 5 tribes, and 3 of them are pretty significant employers in their region. But within our Native American population, the unemployment rate is 11.5%, and 62% of them are participating in the labor force. So we have room for improvement there as well. And then the last one, youth. Youth employment has so many ramifications. When I think about how we can solve all of our employment challenges systemically, I wish we could just direct all of our efforts on youth, because the concerns that we hear all the time from employers that young people don't have the soft skills or a work ethic, the increased crime and drug use, in our young population. And at the end of the day, we just wouldn't have to deal with so many of the challenges with adults if we'd connected youth to careers earlier on. So, again, in the state, our labor force participation rate is only 50% among our youth 16 to 19 years old, and their unemployment rate is the highest in the state. And Just as a note, the youth participation rate, this is only the kids who are looking to work. It does not include students who are not seeking work. Within those youth, we've taken a little bit of a deeper dive, and we've looked at, how does economic disadvantage play into high school graduation rates? And across the state, so this was in 2019, or using 2019 data, we identified that there's an 18% gap between economically disadvantaged students and not economically disadvantaged students in graduating from high school. When we dig into that a little bit deeper, it gets even worse when we look at males. So how do we create, opportunities, efforts to connect education to career that ensures that our economically disadvantaged and even, to that point, our economically disadvantaged males have greater opportunities. The last slide that I wanted to talk about with respect to that hidden talent is the talent that's already employed. The official definition of unemployed individuals includes only those who are jobless or have actively looked for work in the last month. However, there are so many jobless who want to work but have given up looking for work because they believe that there's no jobs available for them. The Bureau of Labor Statistics refers to those individuals as marginally attached workers. In addition, we have people in the labor force who want to work full-time, but they're currently working part-time because they're unable to find full-time jobs. So these are the involuntary part-time workers or the underemployed. That just paints the picture of what's going on in Idaho, what the dynamics are within our labor force. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about one of our initiatives to help connect education to careers. And so Heather's going to cue up a video here.
What do you want to be when you grow up? What are you going to do after college? What's your 5-year plan? Is there room for promotion at your job? Right now, Idahoans of all ages are grappling with these questions. Meanwhile, employers are finding it impossible to find qualified individuals with the right skills, and educators are struggling to connect their students with real-world experiences. With students busy studying, educators busy managing their classrooms, and employers busy building their businesses, how will they ever find time to create meaningful collaborations? Well, that's why we created leader.nextsteps.idaho.gov and are getting the word out about Idaho's work-based learning opportunities. The opportunities start with learning about work. These are experiences that can happen as early as elementary school. Like career education, employer engagement, and externships for teachers. This is where students start exploring possibilities and learning about training. Learning through work deepens this experience. This is where students can engage in internships, pre-apprenticeships, or co-ops. This phase combines in-classroom and real on-the-job experiences. Then there is learning at work, where individuals are fully employed, yet are engaged in training to help elevate their skills or positions, such as on-the-job training or apprenticeships. Are you an employer or an educator? Would you like to become more involved in helping Idahoans connect with in-demand, high-wage careers? Would you like to discover ways to connect with others exploring these questions in your region? Visit leader.nextsteps.idaho.gov to find tools and resources and to make those connections.
So our Idaho Leader Initiative is designed really to connect education to careers and to really invite employers into the education system to help develop the workforce. So we wanted to provide opportunities for employers at any level for which they're willing to engage. So we created this continuum where we, if you think about, things on the left side of the screen are really happening more in the education space. And then as you get across over to learning at work, you're looking at things that are happening, with much, much more employer engagement. But, in learning about work, there are so many opportunities to engage in classrooms, by providing career education, so the career counseling, and, looking at opportunities, starting in pre-K and kindergarten. How do you make sure that kiddos know about different career opportunities? Bringing employers in to speak to the classrooms, hosting tours at employers. And then we've launched a program that we teacher externships, where we bring teachers into the workplace over the summer. So they have about a 200-hour experience where they're going into the workplace. They are doing an actual job. It's not a job shadow. It's not a feel-good experience. Like, they're doing a job for the employer, but everything that they're learning, they can go back and apply to the classroom. So it's giving them that practical knowledge to be able to go and create lesson plans that are more relevant than some of the the math or science types of projects that our kiddos sometimes work on. And we also provide them with an experience to learn about the broader workforce needs of the companies that they're externing for, so that they can share what those opportunities are like with their students. In the middle, it's learning through work. So that looks like internships or pre-apprenticeship or co-op programs, where somebody is still, the individual is still primarily in an educational setting, but they're going in and out of the workplace through that time. And then the last column is really learning at work. So providing on-the-job training or apprenticeship opportunities. So our goal with this leader initiative is to really provide employers a way to connect into education, into helping to develop their future workforce, right? Because as an employer, you can either invest on the front end, or you're going to be left with taking the individuals who may have bad habits when they join your workforce. But if you can get in early and help them see why learning is relevant, why showing up on time, what employers expect, all of that, it really will, in the long run, provide you with a better workforce. So I'm going to turn it over to Sabri to talk about a platform that can do just an amazing job to facilitate these interactions, and especially in a state like Idaho, where we have so many rural and remote areas that we just can't, employers can't get to every community. So Sabri.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Wendy. That was amazing regional data to share. I think most states are experiencing similar shortage in skills. So thank you, Heather, for having me.
Sure.
So Heather, did you want me to get started, or did you want to
have go ahead. Sabri works with Nepris, who has an incredible program for employee volunteering. So it would be great if you could share anything about that and how you work with corporations and, tracking and reporting, all of those sorts of things. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen, just talk a little bit about who we are, and really address some of the big barriers and gaps that Wendy kind of talked about. I mean, what is the role of employers in first bringing exposure to careers to students? I mean, students can't aspire for things that they don't know exist. That is the foundation. It's learning about work. That's your first column, right? So we heavily focus on that portion because we strongly believe that exposure and learning about work has to happen even as early as elementary school, and employers need to be engaged at that level. Sometimes high school is too late for them to be learning about work. So I'm going to share my screen quickly. Oops, you don't want to see my... so this is just a quick glimpse of what a typical Npris session looks like, right? I mean, again, today this picture is somewhat challenged because kids may be learning from home, or some of them may be in the classroom. It does not matter where students are. Primarily, our mission has been about using technology to sort of bridge that digital divide in bringing industry professionals virtually to classrooms, especially underserved students in rural communities. I mean, Heather, you mentioned bringing, giving them the actual hardware. Once you have the hardware, what do you do, right? I mean, you have to have meaningful content, you have to have meaningful connections. That's what we focus on. And our mission has been, how do we really engage that individual employees working for these companies directly into classrooms, irrespective of where these students are. They could be in a small rural area in Idaho, or they could be sitting in Austin, Texas, where I am. It does not matter. That is equity of access, is giving every student, no matter who they are, where they're coming from, access to all these professionals, mainly with the goal of bringing that career exposure and relevance to learning, right? So the big problem that we set out to solve was the number one thing, and Wendy, you talked about this, is the youth population, right? That number one reason kids drop out of high school is because they don't see the relevance of school. I mean, we've all been, as parents, as educators, we've all sort of addressed this question: why am I learning linear equations, or why am I learning chemistry? When would I ever use this? So that's really where the number one disengagement happens. And if we're able to show them, okay, you're learning linear equations because you can actually apply it in building a roller coaster, you can become a theme park designer. Those are the connections, the real world connections we want to show the students. And when we talk about digital divide, this study came out in 2015, and it's primarily addressing for the first time, Stanford researchers took parents' tax data and correlated it to where most of the innovators were coming from. And surprisingly, they found that innovators were coming from very few parts of the country, right? And this had nothing to do with academic achievement, but had everything to do with lack of exposure. So when we talk about the opportunity gap, this is really what we are addressing, So at the end of the day, we're talking about exposure and relevance. How do we bring these to students no matter where they are? That's really what we focus on, is how can technology play a role in connecting communities and engaging local employers with local students and engaging students with employers from around the world, right? So I don't want to, I think, Wendy, you covered majority of the trends. I don't want to, beat that too much, but the foundation of preparing students for the future of work really boils down to 3 pillars of career. Number one is occupational identity. That is the learning about work. What do you believe you can be? I mean, as you know, the labor market is changing. Jobs that exist today, we never knew about 5 years back. And post-COVID, many jobs have really changed a lot in what the responsibilities are, what they're called, and so on. So if students don't know what is out there, how can their belief system really be broader, right? So that's one of our core jobs, is, how can we connect students as educators, as technology leaders? How can we connect students to people, places, work experiences that actually expands their occupational identity? And Wendy, also, you talked a lot about skills, right? I mean, really, skills are not something that you suddenly acquire when you're about to graduate high school. It has to be embedded in you as you're developing the whole child, right? So for us, how do we really engage industry with every student in order to actually give them a platform to practice those skills? For example, how amazing would it be for high school students that are presenting their capstone projects to be able to present their projects to a panel of industry experts from the AT&T, from Samsung, from Frito-Lay? Suddenly, it really expands their accountability. Now we've done this many times with classrooms and CT classrooms, and every time, this is the feedback we hear back from teachers, is I've been teaching this course for 10 years. I have never seen my kids take this so seriously. They all came actually dressed up, dressed for success, right? And then they came prepared. They really worked hard to prepare and think about what they were going to present, communication skills. And they presented to a live audience from the industry, from the employer pool. And that is actually presentation skills. Teamwork, collaboration, all of this really, industry can play a direct role in ensuring that that kind of skill development is happening even as early as middle school and high school, and employers can play a direct role in engaging at that level. So all of this eventually ties to social capital, right? Like 8 out of 10 jobs are acquired because of who you know. So doing all of these industry connections to students throughout K through 12 and later really develops a foundational skill, is learning to connect with people outside of their immediate network and learning to build relationships and learning to communicate, which forms the foundation of social capital. It's who you know. And we've had many instances with Nepris where industry that has connected with the classroom to review student projects, students have ended up getting internships. Moving into your second and third column, right, is that work-based learning and stuff like that. So that said, I don't want to, this is kind of where the work that we do as a technology platform comes in, is, I think I want to stop here and ask Wendy, like, what are your biggest barriers? You guys have done an amazing job of building employer relationships. Like, I want you to tell us, like, what your biggest barriers are connecting employers to classrooms. It's easily said than done, right?
It is. And, one of the things that a couple of years ago, we had been talking to employers, and I'm not gonna say we've solved this problem, but employers were very clear that they had a hard time connecting with the schools, because who do they call, right? Is it the principal? Is it the career counselor? Is it, a specific CTE teacher? If they did reach out and make that call, did the call get returned? How do they, I heard really, really sad stories, from employers saying, I reached out to 7, schools in my, local area and offered to do a tour of our plant, and none of them returned my calls. Okay, yep, I get that. At the same time, we were hearing challenges from teachers who were saying, well, we reach out to the businesses and we ask them to come in and do this or host tours or that, and we don't get returned calls. And it's like, all right, neither side is at fault here, right? This is a communication issue, and we need to address the communication issue. And so, you have to have a broker who can help to make those connections. And so that broker can be people, right? It can be, you can have, an organization. My staff there's 6 of us, so we cannot broker those kinds of relationships, across the entire state of Idaho, but you can have organizations that can provide that brokering role, or you can have technology platforms that broker that type of relationship.
And it's a combination of those things, right? I mean, you can't always say, as much as I would like to say this, but the reality is technology doesn't solve all of your problems, right? So, before COVID, many of the brokering organizations were intermediaries and small nonprofits within your region, like your chamber, or even sometimes an economic development or a STEM hub would have personnel who would broker these connections, but most of them were in person, which is awesome when you can do that. But can that actually reach thousands of students? Absolutely not. And even from an employer perspective, when you think about it, even the most, the ones that are well equipped and really have specific goals of reaching out to the classrooms and have education outreach, people like AT&T and Verizon's who have the ability and the resources to do this are still not able to scale. The technology only comes in when you want to really think about scale, right? So it's talking about how you can reach thousands of students if you only have 45 minutes of your time. And now post-COVID, we know that we can do this without leaving your office. It does not replace the in-person connections, but it takes away some of these barriers of administrative time. Like most often when schools want to reach out to employers, how do you know who's coming into the school? It's a security issue. How do you do your background checks? All of those issues sort of go away when, that's what we do as a technology platform, is we're making that administrative work super easy, where it's one button click and everything is handled, and here, voila, here is a professional. But the most important thing I want to mention is the skills-based approach to this employee engagement, right? Which is, I used to work for a Fortune 500 company before I co-founded Nepris, and often used to go into classrooms saying, hey, you're a STEM role model, you need to come in and talk to my kids. And I would go into these classrooms, have absolutely no idea what's happening in that classroom, what are they teaching, and what I know, like how are my skills actually relevant to what's happening in the classroom. I just show up and randomly talk about my career. It's better than nothing, but I randomly talk about my career, and you can see the kids just glaze over, because I'm not a video game designer or a roller coaster designer where immediately they understand what I'm doing, right? So that aspect is what, when we set out to start Nepris, that is where we honed in, and we said we want to help employers meaningfully connect employees into classrooms. We want educators in classrooms to know exactly what person, which employee with what skills is required at what time within your classroom. For example, if you want a chemist to connect with your chemistry classroom, or you're talking about weather in your elementary classrooms, and you want to now talk to a meteorologist, and how that is where that skills-based matching to connect the right person into the right classroom. That's a monumental task. And that's what we are hoping that we can solve, both for the industry side and for the educators,
Well, and
to be
Sabri,
able to scale that.
What you're saying is so important, because we have to value the employer's time, right? They have a job to do. They've got, they've got a bottom line to contribute to. And one of the challenges is when a school does find, in this disconnected model, when a school does find an employer that they can build a relationship, then it becomes the one employer that they're going to. And so it's, the ask after ask. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but it becomes challenging for the employer to give that much time. But when the time is specific to, a project, a need, skills, right? When, they are able to expand the reach. So rather than it just being, the 15 kids, the 20 kids that are in the classroom that day, but it can be accessed by, hundreds or thousands of kids across the nation, then it really makes it easier to invest the time and the resources into.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wendy, what you're saying translates to most districts do a great job. You have a workplace learning coordinator or somebody, who's able to pull in a couple of local employers, bring them to a lunch and learn. Employers are excited, school districts are excited that they made this connection, and everybody leaves the room and there's no clear direction of how to engage. Like, what does that individual teacher in the classroom need to do the very next day to reach out to that employer? That is the hard part, right? That's where I think matching what classroom lessons are happening and matching that to a requirement to connect industry, and being able to use technology to sort of manage all these relationships and match the skills and bring them into the classroom at the right time. So a couple of, Heather, I don't know if you had any specific questions, but I want to talk about engagement models that work. So if you have any questions, we can address that first.
Well, I have a story, really. back when the Obama administration did those cliff funding grants where they gave technology out to the states, Digital Wish actually ran one of those, and we put one-to-one computing into 30 schools across the state of Vermont. But part of that was a big workforce development piece, and we went in partnership with Dell, and we took an entire school district to Dell on a field trip. And when I think about the platform today and what it offers, and I think about what we had to go through to get, you know, a classroom of 30 kids and then another class to go and do a tour of Dell. We had to have parent permission forms. We had to have, you know, all sorts of logistics. It was unbelievable. The bus driver, you know, so many things. It took literally 2 months to set up a half-a-day tour of the Dell facility. And when we think about the platform and what it offers today, I mean, these kids had to be within a reasonable range of the Dell facility. We had them teamed up with Dell employees. Just that matching process of getting them teamed up with a staff person, and then they got to meet them on their day of the visit. But I mean, it was a tremendous amount of work and very manual, very person by person. So, you know, I would be interested to hear the platform perspective from both of you about, you know, what does how the platform simplifies that whole process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll talk to that. I think you said it really well, Heather. It's the expenses and the time, both on the employer side and the education side. And I'm like, I'm always like, we don't want to replace that with technology. Where you're able to do that once a year, more power to you, you know, but how do you do this industry engagement in the classroom on an everyday basis? Doing industry engagement once a year is not going to move the needle as far as preparing students for the future of work. You know, to do it every day in the classroom or every week in the classroom, it's impossible to do that without a technology platform. That's really where we are coming. I mean, in person and virtual connections to industry has to live side by side. And in a post-COVID world, we understand the value where virtual is here to stay. It helps you scale and all those things. So the engagement models that, you know, when we first started, I remember our very, very first session. This was 8 years back. I was in a CT classroom in McKinney ISD in Texas. The teacher said, you know, we're required to have students present their capstone projects. No, actually, they were learning about pneumatic devices. And she said, I mean, we've never seen a pneumatic device. Like, what is a pneumatic device? It's so abstract. Sure. I mean, so she wanted to connect. She didn't even know which industries. She could take a guess, but the teacher didn't know exactly what industries pneumatic devices are used. So as the very first teacher using our platform, we connected that classroom with the General Motors assembly plant in Arlington, Texas. It's again a local employer. And till today, I mean, today there's like over 15,000 live sessions and 1 million students reached. Even till today, after all of that engagement, that is still one of my very best sessions of industry engagement. The students were in the classroom. They were able to see an entire virtual tour of the General Motors assembly plant, walking them from sheet metal to the truck driving off of the lot and showing how hundreds of pneumatic devices are used in building a car. You know, I mean, you talk about engagement, right? I mean, every kid's eyes were lit up. And they were like, okay, now I get it, right? So something that was so abstract became so real, that mattered to see that connection. So that is a teacher. Teachers have control through the platform to say, I am teaching this, or my kids are doing project X, and I want to actually connect with a specific industry professional. Or they can say, you know, I'm you know, teaching this particular lesson, but I have no idea where this is even applied. So teachers have control, and that's the first engagement model. And then we are able to take the teacher request, match that to the specific skills of professionals. That's really where, not just randomly filling this request with a warm body, but specific, what are the skills and how they connect with the classroom.
Well, that's a really important question, because when you look at a student body, you have a variety of interests across all the careers. Wendy, can you talk about where the biggest demand is in industry and careers across the state of Idaho? It's going to be different nationwide, but it'd be very interesting to obviously, Idaho's have got very unique parameters around career and workplace and the types of businesses that are there. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So I don't think this will be surprising, but healthcare, tech, manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, food processing in the southern part of the state, forest products in the northern part of the state. We've got, tech manufacturing, wide variety of manufacturing. Construction is another one, which is creating an interesting dynamic as the fastest growing state in the nation. People can't get not just houses, but employers can't get construction professionals to come and expand their plants, right? There's like a 2-year wait to get the electricians to come in and do a project. So that's creating, significant pressure on the economy because, as people are trying to build and grow, we don't have enough construction workforce to handle it. We also have a really
How does that change looking at the future? If we look at what's needed today, obviously if construction is needed and there's a 2-year wait, that's going to change, downstream where the demand is.
It will, right? Because, the projects aren't going to, employers aren't going to be able to wait. The projects aren't going to get done, and then people have to make decisions about where to make those investments. But with construction and manufacturing, specifically, one of the real opportunities that we have is to change the way people think about those careers. And that's where, connecting classrooms and careers and, education and employers together is so important because, people have perception that a manufacturing environment is dirty and dangerous. And it's just simply not. We have Chobani is in Twin Falls, Idaho. It's the largest, yogurt plant in the nation. And it is pristine, clean. I mean, just to tour, not even going into the production spaces, but to tour the hallway with the windows that show you the production spaces, we had to completely suit up, in clean room type of gear. So, that's not what manufacturing looked like 20, 30, 50 years ago. Construction, there's so much technology. You think about heavy equipment operation and all of the computers that are in the equipment. It's tech is involved in every job now. So, helping to change the perceptions of not only the youth and the and their parents can quite frankly be a barrier, but also teachers and counselors. You think about the preparation pathway that teachers and counselors go through, and it's go to college, get your 4-year degree, and start teaching. So they haven't necessarily been exposed to these other options and are able to communicate that. So Sabri, hit it right at the, beginning of her presentation, where, that you have to know what these career opportunities are in order to make good choices about where you're going to go in the future. So we've got to do a much, much better job of showing the opportunities in all industries.
Yeah, and then Heather, if I may add just a few more points, when you're talking about employer engagement and bridging this gap, right? Wendy talked about a lot of the local employers, and our focus is when it's not just, technology is just behind the scenes, it's about helping stakeholders like Wendy in their state engage their local employers as well. Once you engage their local employers, bring them on a platform, what do you do, right? How can you get them to really give their time and commit and do what they need to do? Is you need to provide them a framework, right? And that's where now we have so many best practices frameworks of what different companies are doing as far as virtually engaging their employees with local school districts and outside the state, right? And that's where we give the control to the employer. Like I talked about teachers requesting stuff, but it has to be a two-way street. Many times we would bring employers on board and they sign up their employees employees, and then they're waiting around, and teachers are asking for embalmers and chicken therapists, and employers want to talk about the Internet of Things and all kinds of futuristic stuff. And there was already a disconnect in what teachers were asking for and what employers want to talk about. So that second engagement model is giving employers the control within a platform to be able to say, I want to talk about this. I want to offer a mock interview for high school students. I want to do a virtual tour of my workspace. And I want to talk about the things that are important for my future workforce. So they have control. They are able to come in and create the topics and create the opportunities. And then we're then able to push that out to all of the schools, specific targeted schools within your state or outside of the state. That way they can scale their engagement right away. They give 45 minutes of their time, and then we're able to record all of these live sessions and create these video libraries. So from an employer perspective, my live session may have reached 1,000 students, but my recorded session lives on in the platform to actually reach 100,000, right? Then teachers are able to take that and build it into their lesson plan. So the time that they give is able to actually exponentially keep paying it back, because it keeps on giving and keeps on reaching more students. And the last thing I want to mention, Heather, is for most, Wendy, did you want to add something to that?
I was just going to say, Sabri, if you weren't planning on doing this, you really should show the dashboard of what the employer engagement looks like.
I was going to go there with that.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, thank you for cueing that, Wendy, because at the end of the day, you're doing the hard work of bringing the employees to the table. Now we've talked about how to engage them meaningfully in the classroom, but what is going to help get them to come back over and over again? They need to understand how far their reach is going, how far their impact is going. If you're not able to provide the data back to them, then it's a one-time engagement, a feel good, everybody leaves. There's not this continuous come back and keep doing this over and over again. So that circle has to close. And that's where I want to show an example of what Verizon is doing. Just a second, let me get out of this. So what I want to show is, here is an example of what Verizon is doing. Here's, so this is Verizon's version of Nepris, right? So behind the scenes, it's our platform, but Verizon has it branded for them. But at the end of the day, we're able to capture all of this data. Like you can see here, there's over 4,000 employees within Verizon that have connected with over 1,700 classrooms and reached 52,000 students. And what is that motivation for the individual employee to keep coming back is they need to understand at each employee level, what is their engagement. So here's a leaderboard of top contributors. Like imagine if you're a Verizon employee, you see your name here and you're recognized for your individual contribution. That's what keeps that engagement going, to incentivize employees to keep them coming back and to provide employers a platform to be able to do that, right? So you can see here, Cheryl here has done 10 live sessions. Individually, she has reached over 1,200 students. When our team hears this feedback consistently from employees is when classrooms write back or they get the data saying, hey, you have reached X number of students. Then there is that motivation of, I want to keep doing this because I'm actually changing lives, So the data is so important for employees. So whether you're an education stakeholder, whether you're an intermediary in the state, you're thinking about employer connections. You cannot really build a scalable, repeatable engagement model if you don't have a plan to capture and report the data back to the employers.
Yeah, Wendy, can you talk about the importance of data tracking to the corporations?
Yeah, I think that, we all want to know what we're doing is making a difference. And so I think having that data available internally for the employers, and then for, in our position as the Workforce Development Council, it helps us see where there's gaps, where we can, where if we've got, employers in one part of the state that are, engaging at much higher level than other parts of the state, what are some of the best practices that are going on there? How can we, use some of those lessons to help increase employer engagement in other parts of the state? So, it's internally for the company to see the impact of what you're doing, knowing that 45 minutes or whatever time you spent is actually providing a meaningful opportunity to those students and helping to build your future workforce. But then also just so that the stakeholders can really understand where we need to do a better job of facilitating that engagement.
Well, great. We do have the video. Sabri, should we show the video?
Absolutely. I think that kind of brings it home when we talk about using technology to connect, and what kind of connections, what kind of people. So the point I want you to notice in the video, it's a short video, but you'll still see the diversity of professions, the diversity of demographics, and the diverse nature of pathways and professionals and workplaces that come into the picture, right? That's really what we want to expose kids to. Sure, go ahead.
Since 2013, Nepris has been bridging the gap between industry and education, bringing real-world relevance and career exposure to all students, while enabling companies and professionals to share their skills and knowledge with the future workforce. We break social and geographic barriers to provide exposure to career pathways that students never knew existed.
Here is called the big brown bat. And when I say big brown bat, a lot of people think, oh my gosh, it's going to be huge. No, the big brown bat is smaller than your hand.
Each and every one of you all are very important people. Each and every one of you all are capable of achieving amazing things in your life, just as long as you believe.
Now, we are on a working farm today, and we're going to start here at the calf pens, but I want you guys to think about something as we're going along. You're going to see a lot of different aspects of the dairy industry, and these two would be considered farmers. I also went to school here at Ohio State in agriculture education. But there are lots of other jobs and lots of other duties that are involved in this farm and all of agriculture together, besides being a farmer and working on the farm.
We want to be able to connect people or students that have an interest in a STEM field, specifically with our industry. Many of them don't know what we do here, and they don't know that this is a facet of engineering or a facet of the technical field.
So this is a little pen. It looks like a pen. It's got a little light on the end of it. And I just have her open her eyes, and I quickly shine the light into her eye, okay?
Happy connecting.
So that kind of sums up, like even in this short clip, you can see from ag and food to IT to women in STEM to all kinds of experiences. It's our goal has always been, how do we help educators and industry and employers sort of bring down those four walls for students and open up the world to them so that they can dream big and they can aspire for something that they may not have ever known is a possibility for them. So.
Well, great. Any closing remarks for schools and corporations out there to have them get involved? What's their call to action at the end of the day?
Oh, no, from our perspective, yeah, email us. You'll always hear back right away. We have an amazing team that supports all of this effort. So support@npris.com. And we're happy to do a more detailed demo, whatever you want. We'll be able to address that. Support@npris.com.
So I would just leave people with the message that this is your future workforce, and you can either take an active role in helping to prepare them, or like I said earlier, you're going to, these are the folks that you're going to be choosing from. State of Idaho, we aren't that much different than other states. And, every employer knows how hard it is to find the right talent. So getting involved, being engaged in developing that talent is of critical importance, because that's who's going to be your future leaders. You're running your companies.
And then Heather, just to add one more thing is 57% of boys and 64% of girls who actually chose a STEM career did so because of one person, one interaction, or one experience. Okay. So it really does not take much to inspire that student to pursue something that they never had a knowledge of before. So the call to action is, let's together create those millions of moments of discovery for every student, right?
That's great. Well, everybody go out there and create moments of discovery for business and students alike. Thanks for attending. This has been Solving the Digital Divide. Everyone come together, go forth and conquer, solve the digital divide as a group. Thank you. Have a great day.